Good morning, everyone. Oops, let me try that again. There we go. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the University Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Sarah Sullivan, and my pronouns are she and her. And I want to welcome members, friends, visitors, to those of us who are here in person and those of us who are here online. So we're really glad you joined us today. I want to thank Alicia for the prelude, lovely prelude that we had this morning. If you want to join me, thank you. And we will start with committee moments. If there's a committee chair that has an announcement for the congregation, please come up.
Good morning, Mary Ann Feldheim for Social Action Committee. The meeting that was scheduled immediately after the service today has been canceled. We realized it was in conflict with the party. So we've moved it to the last Sunday of the month. So look forward to that. We'll have it out. One other announcement, well, two actually. This comes from Evelyn. So in the Sentinel, there was a big article on the two bills that were passed in Florida, House Bill 1645 and 1624, which literally wipe out all environmental protections that we have had in the past. They're devastating bills. So it's sitting currently in the governor's box to be signed. We urge you to call the governor. If you want, I have the number. It's 580-717-9337. Anybody wants it after, I'm happy to give it to you. Please, you'll just leave a voicemail, that's all. Just saying, please don't do this. Please honor the environment that we work so hard to keep. The other is that the update that is very sad, in addition to this two bills, is that the abortion ban, the 6-week abortion ban, is effective now. It started May 1st, and we're starting to see huge issues with obstetricians and gynecologists leaving the state because they are going to be prosecuted for almost anything they choose to do beyond 6 weeks. And most women don't know they're pregnant by 6 weeks. So just be aware of that, be mindful, it's a big issue. So thank you, but social action, not today, and to the mic.
Hi, Janet Levins with Denominational Affairs. So we're having our final Article 2 discussion meeting in 8 days on May 13th at 6:30 p.m. Last week I got up here and I announced it on May 15th, but it's actually May 13th. We have so much going on that we had to shift things around. And I just found out on May 13th at 6:30 p.m. is also the men's group. So if you are a man, you want to go to the men's group and you want to come, feel free to just pop in for 5 to 10 minutes and say your piece, and then you can go back and have manly discussion. Okay, thank you.
I want to call your attention to the last line. The program planning meeting has been changed. Its new date is Wednesday, May 15th. So if you have it on your calendar incorrectly, what's on the screen here is the correct date. Also, just the public service announcement. If you are ill, please stay home. We love you, but we do not love your germs. So stay home, watch us online, and join us when you're feeling better. And there are 3 exits in our building, one from this door through the back, and then there's an entrance to the Memorial Garden, which you can then get out that way. So should you need those, there are 3 of them to choose from. All right, good. So my opening words are a piece called Willing to Fail by Amanda Pope, and these are her words. There's a sign hanging in my therapist's office that says, "What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?" I know it's supposed to be inspiring to encourage people to try for their dreams, but I've always found it a little silly. I mean, of course you'd do all kinds of things if you were guaranteed to succeed at them. Picture me running my own TV show as the latest spiritually grounded national expert on, well, just about anything, I suppose, since I couldn't fail. Lately, I've been thinking instead about what I could do, maybe even must do, even though I know I could fail. This came home to me the other day when I was lifting weights. That week we were trying for a personal record, basically the most weight you've ever lifted in that particular way. I had plateaued the last few times we tried, lifting the same weight even though I knew logically I had been getting stronger. Finally, the coach came over and told me to add some more plates on to make the weight bar heavier. But I don't think I can do that much. That's the point, she told me. You'll never know how much you can do until you figure out what you can't do. Something clicked. I added the extra plates and I was sure I wouldn't be able to lift it, but I was newly willing to try and fail. I set that personal record. I added more plates and set another personal record. Then I added still more plates, and I couldn't get the bar off the ground. That final fail helped me know I had actually hit my limit. It helped me to understand more completely my own strength. I'm pretty sure that taking a Sharpie to signs in your therapist's office is frowned upon, so I'll let that be. But if I could, I think I'd substitute the question, what can you do if only if you are willing to fail? Our opening music is hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. It'll be led by Janet Levins and played by Alicia Tran.
Please rise as you're willing and able. This is a hymn that we used to sing all the time about 6 years ago, and for some reason we stopped singing it. I'm like, well, here we are singing it again. So you old-timers should know this one. Gather the Spirit, harvest the path, a separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this song. Trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather in celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit of heart and mind, a seed for the sowing, I laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, a body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit, growing in all, dawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, a chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then.
gather in hope, in passion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
It's time to light the chalice. Our chalice lighter today is Jo. Her pronouns are she and her. She's age 5, and she was so excited because she has a surprise birthday party coming up. Now, Jo, is that for someone else that you're attending? Her. Had one. Please join me. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. And our society's affirmation, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. So, welcome to everyone who has joined us here. If you wouldn't mind, if you would also turn around and wave to our friends who have joined us online. We're happy that you're here as well. If you would also now just turn to the folks next to you, especially if there's someone new, and greet them on this lovely day. All right, thank you so much. Thank you all for doing that. We'll now go ahead and return you to your regularly scheduled service. Paula always says that that's the sound that she imagines in heaven, which I just love. So feel free to continue those conversations afterwards. There is a potluck today, but Lori will give us more information about it later on. I also forgot one other small announcement at the beginning. If you haven't, please turn off the ringer or dingers on your phone. Yeah. We now move to our time of joys and concerns. Sharing the important events in our lives is what brings us closer in community. Please come up to the microphone if you want to share. Remember, this is being broadcast online to the whole world, so don't share anything that you don't want everybody to know.
I have a joy today. I went to Margie's house and I jumped in the pool. It was time to get out.
And if I could add, Chase pretty much swam all day. Yes, I have several joys today. First of all, I went to Stephanie Messler's play that she wrote called Mother's Days on Friday evening with Martha, and it was really entertaining. I really highly recommend it if you can get to the Breakthrough Theater. It was really fun. Then I went to Margie's party yesterday, and the highlight of my day was getting to hold little Maisie, because I haven't had a baby fix in a long time. So that was really wonderful. And my biggest joy is that you all know that my husband is recently in a nursing home. We got certified. Means the VA will be paying for it. Yay!
Hi, I'm Ender Walker, and I have a joy that I got to see a few friends yesterday at the band banquet, which is like an end-of-year party for band.
Good morning. I see that the small electronics and battery box is full. I'll be taking it today, but it will return next week for more people to fill up more things. So thank you for that. Also, if anybody wants these, I bought them by mistake. Please just come and say I'll take them. They're bone health they're D, supplements, chewable supplements. D and whatever. Calcium and D, yeah. Anybody want?
Hi, I'm Peter, and I want to second the appreciation for the generosity and grace of Margie and Luke. They have a lovely, lovely home and have routinely invited us over to share in their beautiful place, and I'm very grateful that they did this. So.
My joy has to do with birding. Many of you know that my husband and I are avid birders, so yesterday we got up really, really early, and we started birding at 5:30 a.m. This is in Little Big Econ, and we hiked 5 miles down to the St. Johns River, and it was an amazingly birdie outing, so all kinds of great things. But we found one super rare bird that has never been seen in Seminole County before. So we got our first county record, and I was so happy. It's called a whimbrel. It's kind of uncommon on the coast, but they're just coastal birds. They hardly ever come inland. So we're like, what's that? Oh my God. So it was great.
My joy is I'm going to go to the pool.
The pool.
I'll also see if we have any joys and concerns from our online crew. Let me check here just a moment. Nope, I think that is all for us today. So if you would like to take a moment with me, let's meditate silently on the joys and concerns that were shared here today and the ones that remain unspoken in people's hearts. All right, thank you so much. So Joey Cole is going to read for our Time for All Ages today. Joey, did you want to invite the kids up if they want to come? So
I would love that, but I know they don't always want to come. But if you would like to come, you can come up closer. That's lovely. Just have a seat. That'd be great. Thank you. Hi, Joe. We share a name, you know. My middle name's Josephine. Oh, how nice. Oh, a lovely crowd. This is wonderful. Well, I'm happy to report, not happy to report that Lindsay's not here, but I'm happy to report that we're using Lindsay's book, and she has chosen the letter G for today. That's okay. You can have a seat, Evangeline. That's lovely. Thank you. Okay. This is for the letter G. G is for good, for gifts we can share. We're grateful for goodness we find everywhere. And a goodness that I'm hoping you'll think of today, listen to the gifts and the names of the people in the story. Might ask you afterwards. Gail hummed a tune to herself as she skipped home from school. She couldn't carry a tune very well, but it was fun to try. Her big sister Greta sang a song in front of the whole school, and it was beautiful. I wish I could sing like my sister, Gail said to herself. Mommy was taking dinner out of the oven as Gail bounced into the kitchen. What did my teacher mean when she said Greta has a gift? She asked. Greta loves to sing, Mommy answered. She has a lovely singing voice, and sometimes people call that a gift. Just then, Daddy came in from the garden. He had a potted plant in his hand, and he showed it to them. Gail sniffed at the bright pink flowers. You can make anything grow, she sighed. Daddy laughed. Well, why, thank you, he said, but I do have lots of help. The sun and the rain and even the soil are my partners when I'm gardening, and I'm grateful for all of them. Gail followed her father out into the garden and helped him put away his tools. Glenda, her friend next door, was leaning on the fence, watching them. She had a sad look on her face. I was supposed to visit my grandma today, Glenda sighed, but I can't because she has a bad cold and she doesn't want me to catch it. Why don't you draw a picture and send it to her, Gail suggested. You can make such pretty kittens. They look real enough to purr. Glenda clapped her hands. That's a great idea. It will make her feel better too. She ran into the house to get her paper and crayons. Mommy called from the door that dinner was ready. The table was set for company. Greta was in the hallway talking to Uncle Gus. What a yummy, oh goody, Gail squealed. Uncle Gus is such fun. What a yummy dinner Mommy had fixed. Everything tasted so good, and Uncle Gus's funny stories kept everyone laughing. After dinner, Gail helped her sister clear the table. Thanks, little sis, Greta kissed her on her nose. You are such a good helper. That night, as Gail got ready for bed, she thought to herself, Mommy is such a good cook. Daddy makes everything grow. Greta can sing. Glenda draws beautiful pictures. Uncle Gus makes people laugh. Everyone has a gift but me. Mommy came in to kiss her goodnight and noticed the sad look on her daughter's face. What are you thinking about? Mommy asked. Everyone has something special they can do, Gail answered. I wish I had a gift. Why, Gail, Mommy whispered as she kissed her, you are a good person, thoughtful and kind, and that is the nicest gift of all. You have the gift of showing love. Isn't that nice? What are the gifts? What were some of the gifts? Yes? One of the gifts was being able to draw really well. What's another one? To love, to be able to show love. You're right. What a lovely gift. Anybody think of any other gifts? The gift to make things grow. And the gift to make people laugh. These are wonderful gifts and gifts that you have as well. Thank you. And thank Lindsay for this incredible book.
Thank you, Joey. That was great. Our interlude and offering is an opportunity for you to support the work of organizations in our community, as well as our own congregation. The song is Guantanamero, and it will be played by Alicia Tran. That was really lovely, Alicia. Thank you so much for playing that for us. All right, our children's recessional will happen now. Any children that want to go to the back, you're welcome to do so. We belong. and bless you and send you on your way. We love you and bless you today and every day. All right. Our speaker today is our friend Pastor Jim Coffin. He's been a regular speaker with us, and we love every time he's come. Today, he's coming to speak to us related to his experience when he was a volunteer in Mexico. If you would join me in welcoming Pastor Coffin.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. And so far, you have always treated me very nicely, and I appreciate that. And so it's a pleasure to be back. And when Martha contacted me and asked if I could be available today, she said it's May 5, and I go, oh, that's Cinco de Mayo. And so she said yes, and I said, well, that's kind of a special day for me because Mexico played somewhat of a defining moment in my life, or I should say period. It wasn't just a moment. It wasn't a fleeting thing. I sometimes tell people that I'm a recovering person. Okay, so I'm a recovering racial bigot. I'm a recovering homophobe. I'm a recovering misogynist. I'm a recovering religious bigot. I'm a recovering, and it's a long, long list of things that I'm recovering from, and I hope that I've made some progress along the way, and I hope that I continue to recover even further. 12 more steps. Okay, very good. Well, it's a start, Anyway, the beginnings of my recovery, I think, in many ways, actually began with my experience in Mexico. I grew up in rural Missouri. I grew up on a farm, and it was quite isolated. We didn't have a very big world that we lived in. It was fairly confined, and so I didn't think very broadly. It was just my little world, and there's a tendency for us to think that the way we do it is the way it should be done, and anybody who does it in a different way is stupid or evil, or there's a long list of adjectives that we can use here for those who do it differently from us. And so nationally, I was very gung-ho American, and we're the best, and there's nobody else who's got it together like we do, and very self-congratulatory. Religiously, I was very self-congratulatory. There were a lot of benighted souls out there, who just didn't have a clue, and we had it all together. And so there's a lot of this that it probably is good if we can learn to adjust a bit. But the only way we adjust is when we encounter something that kind of forces us outside of our comfort zone. It forces us to ask ourselves some questions, and then we can look at things from a slightly different perspective. I might just mention that there was one thing that my father used to say that made quite an impact on me, and I'm sure that he was riddled with bigotries just like I was. I got them from somewhere, and but he did say every person you meet is your superior in some way, and in that way you can learn from that person. And I think that's actually a pretty good thing to keep in mind. Everybody, across the board, it doesn't make any difference, if they're rich or if they're poor, if they're educated or uneducated, if they're religious or if they're, not interested in religion, whatever it is, there's something that everyone has to teach us. And we need to be going through life as persistent and consistent learners all the time. Now, the other side of it is, too, that we're also teachers, but some of us, because we have it all together, see ourselves only as the teacher. So I've got a lot of things, that would just revolutionize your life, and, it's wonderful, but it's hard for us to recognize that there are others who have things to teach us. So I took a year off after my freshman year in college, and I went to Mexico as a volunteer worker. And I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and the Seventh-day Adventists had a program for college students called their Student Missionary Program, and you could go to various parts of the world. Mexico was closer. That worked well for me. I didn't have a lot of money, and this was something that was self-funded. And so I thought also I can learn some Spanish, and that would be helpful to have along the way. And I might just mention that I believe that learning a foreign language is probably the greatest compliment that we can pay to anyone. You know, that person is so important that I'm going to take the time that it takes to invest and learn their language. Now, I'm kind of preaching there and not following through perfectly because I'm not fluent in Spanish, despite my recognition that that would be a good thing to be. So I went to Mexico, and I hadn't really traveled much. I'd had one quick trip to Europe between my junior and senior year of high school, and this was a student group, a youth group that went, and I would compare it somewhat to going to the zoo. You know, we went and, you know, we drove through the countryside in the bus, and we looked at the people, and we said, my, how quaint. You know, and so it wasn't a matter of we were sitting down with people to see what we could learn from them. It was more just go and look at them. And that's kind of what we do when we go to the zoo. You know, we don't sit down with the monkey or the alligator or whatever it might be to see what they can teach us. We just look at them. So I went on one of these looking tours, and I decided that if I was really going to be benefited by being involved with people from different backgrounds, it needed to be at a much more intimate level where there's conversation that takes place. And I was trying to live out this thing that my dad had said, that every person is my superior in some way, and in that way I can learn from them. I didn't speak Spanish. I'd taken 2 years of high school Spanish, but most people who have taken a couple of years of high school foreign language don't learn a tremendous amount about it. I had some understanding of the present tense. So I went about 2 weeks before my school year was starting with these students. I was going to be teaching 6 classes of English. I taught physical education, 6 classes of physical education, and I taught gardening, which the only skill that I had at all with gardening was that I'd pulled weeds in the family garden and hated every minute of it, you know, and I knew what I didn't like, but that was my portfolio. And then I had to be in charge of the grounds department for the school where we were, and I had 14 boys who worked for me in the afternoon for a couple of hours. Anyway, before I got into the classroom, I said I better really refresh my Spanish, and so I tried to increase my vocabulary by several thousand words. And I would write a list of words in Spanish, and then I would write the list of words in English, and then I would fold it under, and I'd see the English column there. Now I'd put it in Spanish, and then I'd fold it under, and I'd go back to English, you know. And I was able to learn probably 3,000 words, nouns or verbs, just in the infinitive, you know, not, and so I would talk in the present tense if I was conjugating the verb at all. If I couldn't conjugate it at all, I'd just use the infinitive, you know, to go, to say, to whatever it might be. But it's amazing how people understand if you're looking at them and, you know, you're making a little bit of a stab at it. And I did really push my mind really hard, and I did find that I was a little uptight and didn't sleep well, you know, because I was working so hard to come up with this. And then I said to the kids that I want you to use English in any situation that you can use it. So if you know the word house and you're saying, you know, let's go to the casa, well, don't say casa, say house. So I want you just to throw English words into your Spanish speech whenever you're with me. And it worked really quite well, actually. And I was patted on the back a bit by the time I left because I lived with these kids. I ate in the dining room with them. This was a boarding school. Ate in the dining room with them and interacted with them a lot. And And so they're teaching me words, and I'm teaching them words, and then they would put it into their sentence. And so it was pretty crude speech, as far as following grammatic structures. But at least they were getting used to using these words over and over and over again. And so it worked quite well. Well, anyway, I wanted to learn from them, and I didn't want to project the idea that I had just parachuted in and had all the answers, and then I was going to be, going on and moving on. I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to interact with them. I wanted to go away as benefited as I possibly could. So there were just lots of things that were different for me. One is that I was away from home. And it's a lot harder to go to a foreign country where you don't speak the language well and be the only person your age on the campus. That's a lot more lonely experience than even going away to college or something like that, or going away to work. And one of the things that we have, I think, that's a real problem to us is that we're too busy and we have too many distractions. So we've got radio, we've got television, we've got the internet, all that kind of thing. I didn't have any of that kind of thing. I just had me. And so that was probably one of the greatest blessings I had. I was a very social, gregarious sort of person. And so I was always involved in activity. And suddenly all the activity comes to a screeching halt. There is no real activity that's going to take my time like it did here. And so that meant I had time to think about things. And I'd really not been into meditation or reflection, and I'm not necessarily talking about this as a spiritual thing, but just as a mind thing. What did I observe today? What lessons can I learn from it? How does it make a difference? And so to actually have quiet and to deal with quiet is kind of a lost art, I think, in our society for a lot of people. I'm not saying that's everybody, but it certainly was true for me. There was nothing in the way of entertainment, or very little. I mean, there were a few things they did for the students, on a Saturday night, they might have some kind of a special event or whatever, but day in and day out, there was no entertainment. And so it was me with my mind. And that was really, really good for me. And so in one sense, it was nothing. The Mexicans did nothing for me. They just left me alone, during those hours. But being left alone was a great, great benefit. Well, I had my own apartment, and it had one room with a bathroom, and that was it, just one big-ish room. And it had no heat, and it had no cooling. And this was in the Sonora Desert. And so the heat was pretty hot, and so I sweated a lot. And then winter came, and there was frost on the ground. And when you have no heat in your room whatsoever, and it's tile floors and no hot water, you get out of bed and your feet hit the tile floor, and it's frigid. And then you get in the cold shower that's ice cold to warm up. It takes a little while. But at least I was wide awake, and so with all of my thinking and so on, it was a great opportunity. And because I went to bed early, because there was nothing else to do, I would usually get up at 4 o'clock and go run for a few miles, and then sit down and read. And I've not been a great reader. But what else do? You kind of are trying to warm up a little bit, and so I would read. One of the things that hit me was the magnitude of the poverty that many people lived in. Now, I grew up pretty poor. We didn't have running water until I was 5 years old, and then it was only to the kitchen sink. We lived, in just this little old farmhouse that had been built just after the Civil War. And so then, until I was 10, it was the old outhouse, and we thought we were really in pigs in clover, with the idea of having running water to the kitchen sink. And then when I was 10, we actually got an indoor bathroom, and then we were really on cloud nine. You know? No more going out through the snow, you know, and all that kind of thing to the outhouse in the middle of the night. And that was great. Well, the poverty that I saw around the school, there were a lot of indigenous people who lived around the school. People, and they were very poor, very poor. And so I ate in the dining room with the kids, and every morning for breakfast we had some form of beans, rice, and tortillas. Every day for lunch we had some form of beans, rice, and tortillas. And every day for the evening meal we had some form of beans, rice, and tortillas. That gets a little old, you know. Actually, I put on about 30 pounds because the food was so unattractive to me. But I'd made this resolution, I'm going to live like these people live because I want to understand what these people go through. And I'd seen the picture of the Mexican with the sombrero pulled down over his head, you know, and he's lying there beside a cactus or whatever. And, you know, the idea that Mexicans are lazy. And we should know better than that, because if you've had anybody working on your roof, you know, putting on a new roof or whatever, they're probably from Guatemala or from Mexico, and they work really, really well. And so there were a lot of these stereotypes that I had to overcome because I thought this is the way it was, but it wasn't that way at all. It was altogether different. But with the poverty that was there, you know, we ate the beans and the rice and the tortillas, and I thought this is pretty bland, pretty uninteresting food. I had to eat more of it to even begin to be satisfied a bit. But people from the local village would come, and when we threw out the scraps of food, they'd sort through it and take some for their hogs, but anything that was relatively usable, they would actually put it in different containers to take home to eat. And this is what was discarded from this very bland diet of beans, rice, and tortillas. Now, I do have to set the record straight. We did have cornflakes on Saturday mornings. That was the only exception to the rule. Anyway, one of the things that I found was that the recipients of bigotry can also be bigoted. And so there was a pecking order, you know, among the Mexicans, and these were mainly poor Mexicans. They were, you know, very, very, very rich Mexicans, but these were poor Mexicans. But even in this group of poor Mexicans, there was a pecking order, and so if they called you an Indian, indio, that was a very negative word. And in fact, if you got mad at somebody, you called them an indio, because that's the bottom rung as far as they were concerned. And so there's this pecking order that exists. One of the beautiful things for me was that I became a minority. I'd always been in the majority, okay? And suddenly now I'm a minority. And so there are certain social dynamics that exist with a minority. And that is that you may be treated quite nicely as a minority, but if something goes wrong, you know, if you have to take a stand on something, you have to ask somebody to do something they don't want to do, no longer are you asking them to do that because that's just in your job description and you have to do it, but you're doing it because you're a gringo. And so, you know, that was something that took me a little while to get used to. And then I said, how many times do I do that? How many times do I treat minorities that same way? And use the expression, well, for a such and such, fill in the blank, you know, really nice person, you know, or really talented, or really articulate, or whatever it might be. And it's very helpful to be on the receiving end. And that was a jolt to me, to be a minority. And so most of the time they were great to me. And they actually called me Gringo Chilo, which is kind of like cool gringo, you know. And that was until things kind of went bad, and I had to ask them to do something that they didn't want to do, and then I was just gringo. That was it. Anyway, it was a great opportunity for me to have my mind kind of broadened and to see things in a different way. And all the time I'm looking at, well, what do they have to teach me? And they have a lot to teach. It's kind of easy when you don't really stop and think about how somebody else lives. For example, these indigenous people who have minimal Spanish heritage, and it's almost completely indigenous heritage that they have, they would have very big families. They might have 10 or 12 children, and they'd live in a little adobe place that was very small. And, it was all they could do to all fit in on the floor to find a place to sleep. And I think, well, now, if they didn't have so many children, it would be a lot easier to live. It costs a lot. It's hard to come up with the food that's necessary to feed all these children. And certainly you don't have extra money to give them the best education and all that kind of thing. And so I'm thinking to myself, if they could just limit their families to 2 or 3. The only problem is that the mortality rate in those kind of situations is so great that probably 50% of the children will never make it to adulthood. And so, and there's no Social Security for people living in that kind of situation. And so the only Social Security was the children. And so if you're going to make sure that you've got somebody to look after you at the end of your life, you've got to make sure that you've got a lot of them lined up because they may not survive. And so here I come along, this privileged person from elsewhere, and I say to them, I didn't do this, by the way, but if I were to do it, I come along and I say, if you didn't have such big families, you could be rich like I am. And they go, yeah, sure. So just don't have the big family. And they go, and who's going to look after us when, And so there are these cycles that are very, very difficult to break. And because the cycle is actually right. Their thinking is more accurate than my thinking is, granted the realities that they face. And so it's hard for me to come in, as somebody who really doesn't grasp what it's like to be in that sort of situation. And so, I began to understand the impact of poverty, even though I'd grown up in what I considered to be substantial poverty, the impact of this widespread poverty, where it was whole groups of people. I came across a statement that this is more recently, this is after Mexico, but it kind of summarizes, I think, some of my experience there. I came across a used book. We were traveling up in New England, and I went to a bookstore and found a used book by somebody by the name of Frances Parkinson Keyes, who I knew nothing about, but she was a journalist back in the day. And it just looked kind of interesting, and I paid the 25 cents that they wanted for the book. And this woman had grown up in privilege in Boston. She had everything. And so she read French and German and English, all the classics, read them in the original languages, was fluent in every one of those languages, rarely saw a painting but what she knew, who it was who had painted it. And she had a really classical education, and she spent long periods of time in Europe traveling and studying. And anyway, she said, and I'm quoting her now, "It is natural for a privileged child to feel that the setting and the way of life with which he is familiar is the best in the world. Whether this happens to be London or Lisbon, Persia or Paraguay, or any locality in your own country. It is probably a blessing if this feeling continues throughout adult life, since it makes for a kind of contentment that can come only with a personal sense of belonging to a certain region, quite aside from the more impersonal but equally strong feeling of national patriotism. Certainly in my case, I am never going to feel that other cities have all that Boston or Washington, D.C. can offer me, or that any countryside is as beautiful as the upper Connecticut Valley and the corresponding parts of Virginia. Now, here's what I want to say, and this is quoting her. But when such a feeling results in the conviction that it is only on one's native or familiar heath that there are fine people, lovely sights, and a well-ordered and pleasant way of living, the consequences are disastrous. You know, we've got it all together. You know, we're so great. We're so fantastic, whether it has to do with nationalism, whether it has to do with education, whether it has to do with religion, whatever it might be, when we're just sitting there patting ourselves on the back and saying, we've got it together, and all you know, the unwashed masses out there, you know, they're just not part of it. It's disastrous. And so she went on and she said, that it's disastrous and it breeds intolerance, misunderstanding, and often downright antagonism. And so when I start off and say that I'm a recovering bigot, you know, I'm a recovering just about everything that is on the bad list, you know, it really is true. You know, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of myself as terribly bigoted at that time. But as I march through life and interact with more people and understand other people's ways of looking at things and doing things and why it is that they do it that way, I suddenly realize, no, you've been substantially bigoted. You just didn't know it. And going to Mexico was one of the things that began the process of opening it up. I left Mexico and I went to England for 3 years to study, and that helped to broaden me a bit more. I moved from England to Australia, and so spent 10 years in Australia, and then I came to Florida, and all of the places have been educational, you know, and of course I come here to your facility to speak to you as if I have the answers, when I'm just searching for answers, you know, and I may have collected a few along the way, and I may have a few insights, but I can assure you there are many more insights to be gathered. And so one of the things that has really impressed me, I've interacted with this congregation more than any other congregation outside of my own faith tradition. And I'm a little on the periphery in my own faith tradition. You know, I would be considered somewhat a heretic, you know. But anyway, I've interacted with this group, and it has been highly educational for me and beneficial for me. And I look back at your 7 principles, which make a really positive impact on me. You know, it's not complicated. It's simple. It's down to earth. It's easy to understand, and it's not specific in the sense that, you know, here's the principle, and therefore you must do this. It's no, you must figure out how to apply that principle in the circumstances where you find yourself. And so when I look back on my life journey, as it were, and Mexico was one of those very early experiences that really made me stop and think. Now, I've had opportunity to travel to a lot of other places as well. I've spent time in Papua New Guinea, and I've spent time in the Solomon Islands and in the Fiji, and interacted with the local people in those kind of situations. And I've come to the conclusion that there are no illogical people, or very few. There could be some with some chemical imbalance that, you know, they really are crazy, you know, and it's very sad, you know, very unfortunate. But for the most part, if you understand the presupposition of the person, you know, the perspective from which they're coming and on which they're basing their action, there is no such thing as illogical. It all hangs together. And what we have to do when we encounter the people who, you know, aren't on our wavelength and look at things in a different way, is to try to get below the surface to the presupposition to understand why it is that they think that way. And I think that really can help us dramatically, in interacting with other people. And if we can have that idea that every person has something to teach me, no matter who they are, no matter how primitive their background, no matter how conservative their politics or how liberal their politics or whatever it might be, everybody has something to teach me. And so the obligation is for me to be the learner who can learn from that situation. Anyway, the 7 principles, I look at this, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but my experience in Mexico and subsequent interactions with people of various backgrounds. And so for 11 years, I worked with people of different spiritual backgrounds and had the privilege of working with the Interfaith Council. And of course, that's how I came across you and why you've done so much for me, and I thank you for that. But the inherent worth and dignity of every person, whether it's the rich Mexican, whether it's the run-of-the-mill Mexican, whether it's the poverty-stricken Mexican, there's worth and dignity for everybody. And there's the risk that there can be bigotry at every level as well. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, okay, across the board, beautiful, this is great stuff. Acceptance of one another, but also the ability to say, let's not rest on our laurels, let's continue to improve. We're not saying we don't accept you until you get to such and such a standard, but we're going to encourage spiritual growth, and I would expand that even beyond just the spiritual, mental, it's the whole gamut of human experience that we want to expand upon. And then just skipping down a little bit, the goal of world community. That would be just so helpful if we didn't divide up into our little subsets, the goal of world community, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence, which goes even beyond people to the whole of nature around us, the whole thing. And those are all lessons that I had to travel the world to find, where you had them right here already, written down. So don't fail, to take these aspirational concepts and try to implement them, because that really is what it's all about. So I wish all of you a very happy Cinco de Mayo, and I want to thank the Mexican people who I encountered for educating me to the degree that they were able to educate me, even though I'm unteachable in many ways. So, thank you so much. I wish you a very wonderful Cinco de Mayo.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we're going to extinguish the chalice. If you would join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of unity, or the fire of enemy. These to carry our hearts until we are together again. For our closing music, it's going to be hymn number 305, De Colores, and it'll be led by Janet Levins and played by Alicia Tran. Lori, do you want to, after the closing words? Okay.
So we get to sing De Colores again. We sang this last week, and now we have another chance to sing a verse in Spanish. And we all heard how wonderful it is to learn a foreign language. Anyway, please rise as you're willing and able. This time we're singing, if you have the hymnals, it's 305 in the gray hymnal. We're singing the first verse, and then the first verse in Spanish, and then finally the second verse in English. Oh, the colors, yes, the colors we see in the springtime with all of the flowers. All the colors, when the sunlight shines through and rips in the cloud and it showers. All the colors, as a rainbow appears when some cloud is touched by the sun. The colors are bound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. De colores he visto en los campos en la primavera. De colores son los polaritos que vienen de fuera. De colores el arco iris que viene a lucir. Y porque son los grandes amores de muchos victorias me costan a mí. Oh, the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. Oh, the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. Oh, the colors, yes, the colors of people in their place in the sun. Oh, the colors are bound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun.
For my closing words, I want to share with you a story from the year that my family spent in Germany. Our son was 9 years old, and we enrolled him in the local public school. Despite the fact that he didn't speak any German, we knew he would pick it up and he'd be fine. And he did pick it up, and he did do fine. But mid-year, we took a trip back to home for an anniversary party and all. He went to his school and visited one of his classes, and the teacher asked him to just basically do a question and answer session. And so one of the questions people asked him was about language, and he said, yes, I've learned German well, but they think I'm stupid because I can't express myself. And I'm not stupid, but they all think I'm stupid. And the teacher said, interesting. All of you students, you've all met people here in this school who are learning English. Have you ever had that experience? And do you think that Jay is stupid? So maybe you might think a little more broadly when you meet somebody who doesn't speak English well. You don't really know. And all the kids went, like, mind blown. And it was just a very good example of all the things that Jim talked to us about today. Is keep your mind open and be willing to learn. Thank you all for coming, and now I want to welcome Lori up to talk to us about potluck.
So we're doing our potluck today. So